Welcome back to the Ruck and Maul Podcast. On this week's episode, don't blame the ref. England have many other issues. Ireland get back to winning ways. Tyrone Green, remember the name. Could he be the quickest guy in the Premiership? We'll discuss that. Plus, Super Rugby Aotearoa returns. But lads, let's get straight into this. Six Nations, 2 games at the weekend. We'll start with England. We lost. We conceded only 8 points less than Italy. So I don't really know that's good on the Italians or that's kind of where we are at the moment. But obviously the refereeing decisions have been talked about from those casual fans of, blame the ref. But yeah, unfortunately you get those cases, don't you? But yeah, England, a bit of a worry.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, just to get out of the way, there is no question that some of the refereeing decisions were odd, and the England team have a right to be disappointed about that. Nonetheless, not really good enough.
No.
A lot of it is self-inflicted.
Like with the water boy thing, I think I had a few Guinnesses at this point, so drink responsibly. So I think when I first saw it, this is a bit outrageous. But when you actually break it down, like the water boys shouldn't be on the pitch because it's not. They haven't taken the point, so shouldn't be allowed anyway from both sides. I mean, common sense would dictate the referee might stop it, but he doesn't have to. That's why you've got to play the ref. Pascal goes there is a bit of a cowboy anyway. He's not like a referee that no one's ever heard of. Like he's come out of the woodwork to spoil the party. They know what he's like. You know, you can't really talk to him. You know, he's going to get things wrong. He's going to get things right. Like, yeah, for me, that you can't. And also, like, you see, Owen Farrell asked him, can I have a chat with my team? That usually is, guys, simmer down, not bring the whole group in.
Yeah. Like a coaching session.
Yeah, like, we've got to be better. Like, no, it's obvious we've got to be better, lads. Like, no one else does that in the Premiership where it's, come and have a huddle, lads. It's, discipline, lads, discipline. It's pretty common. The Lou Rees-Zammit one was interesting, the knock-on, but, you know, isn't it? It's not that clear, is it?
I mean, it's still being debated, so it's not that clear.
Yeah. It's obviously an edge case for what is a kick, like the ball drifting out of your hands and onto your lower leg and going forward off your lower leg. Does that have to be controlled and that in order to be a kick, or is it just drop the ball, hit it with your foot? That's a kick. It's questionable.
But you can't hide away from the fact that the Kieran Hardy try is something that you score when you're 15.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how bad that defending is from Elliot Daly. And we'll probably come on to the point in a moment about the England players not having as many minutes as the other players. And Johnny found this thing earlier that he put in our WhatsApp chat about minutes and stuff. We'll probably talk about that in a minute. But, like, Elliot Daly is a very, very good rugby player. Again, caveat, we always say this on podcasts. He's a lot better than us. But we can still comment and say he was not very good. And there are a lot of other players that could be playing in his position at the moment because that was really poor.
He did have some good moments.
To be fair, he did have some good moments. And I think, like, with the decisions as well, is like we can argue over 2 decisions that the ref made. When Wales were close to scoring, okay, if they didn't get that kick to crossfield kick, they might have still scored a try at that point. They would have probably got at least 3 points if that didn't happen, maybe. And the fact we're talking about these fine margins is that actually Wales were the better team on the day, which I think is overall, I think they were probably the better team. I think England looked a lot better in parts. But I think Wales were definitely the better team. And with Elliot Daly, he does have moments of brilliance, but I think lots of players had moments of brilliance. It's just consistency. If you can't be consistent at that top level, someone else should probably have a go. It's not that he's never going to be out of it completely. Maybe just put him to the bench and give someone else a go. But
have some depth. Just have some options. Like, he's played, like, with regards to the Saracens situation, like, he could have played for Saracens if he really wanted to, but he still hasn't had the opportunity as others in the Premiership to have played that many games. But, like, you've got Max Mellings, like, was on fire. Like, Watson was playing. You could even move Watson to 15. I've got no issue with that because he's played minutes. He's had rugby minutes. And then you can bring, ultimately, before the Six Nations, the most informed player who, when you look at his club at the moment, who could do with like a bit of X factor. Wasps really struggling. We'll come back to the Premiership, but Wasps are really struggling at the moment with any sort of go forward X factor. A dog who's just wasted in the England squad, like sat there, like Lee Blackett must be sitting there like, come on, Eddie, you're taking the mick here, mate. You got my best player sat in the stand. Like, I just say my changes for England, because I agree with you, Johnny. I think that Wales team they played very well, but you've got to get Malins in, you've got to start Ben Earl, and you've got to at least get a dog on the bench. Because what's the point of having him in the squad?
Well, the point of having him on the squad is that he's going to be the absolute most important player in the summer tour when Tuolangi and Lawrence are both with the Lions. Or maybe not Lawrence, but certainly Tuolangi.
Lawrence?
Not impossible. Not impossible. Depends how Gatland wants to play. But yeah, it's very annoying. Like, Malins was so sharp when he came on.
Yeah.
And one thing I said Daly had a couple of good moments, but there were a few phases where, now this is actually something we did quite well. England did quite well. That when the backs were playing with the ball, for really the first time in a while, they looked really good. And there were a couple of times where the ball got to the 15 on the left-hand wing. First 3 quarters, it was Daly. The last 3 quarters, it was Malins. Daly struggled to get the ball through his hands to May. And obviously, everybody knows, obviously, hold your man to an extent, but May can do more with less space than anybody thinks he can. So, if in doubt, make sure, whatever you do, make sure you get the ball to him, even if it's a bit early. Daly couldn't do it, but then Malins, obviously, maybe slightly less rusty, maybe just a better ball player because he can play at 10. Every time that situation happened, got the ball to May makes 10 meters. So those like tiny margins, very difficult. But I think now that the tournament is lost, basically, given that Wales now have 3 wins, I think we just have to play a more interesting team for the rest of the tournament, see what people can do.
We have got not come 5th, because that's where we're going at the moment.
But I don't mind if we come 5th. If we came 5th and Adogwu, Malins, Earl, Robson, Stewart, if they all started at least one of the remaining games, that would be fine. If we can, I wouldn't mind coming 5th to have them play in a Six Nations game.
And actually, coming 5th might force Eddie's hand a bit to actually make some changes. Where if you come 3rd, then you might not. My problem is in certain key positions, I don't know who the second choice is. I know who I might have as the second choice, but I don't know who Eddie Jones's second choice is. I just know the last person he put in for one game and went, nope, not you, I'm back to Ford, or nope, I'm back to Farrell. I know the last person. Doesn't mean that is the second choice. And I think in any great team, I watched a South Africa documentary about the World Cup, and their whole thing initially was just get depth. 18 months out to a World Cup, get some depth, because you don't know what might happen with injuries and you need people to swap in. And it's not 15 players that win you a World Cup. It's probably a squad of like 30 and the people supporting who don't make the match day 22 as well. And I don't know in certain positions who the second choice is.
Yeah, it's that difficult situation where the team really, really did peak and they got everybody over that cap threshold that Jones likes to talk about. I think the average squad caps of over 40, and or maybe it's 60, and that's when teams win World Cups. They got the squad there for the 2019 World Cup. Didn't quite win it, but got as close as you possibly can. And now are on the downswing a need to recreate an upswing, but all of that credit in the bank leading up to 2019, they're still good players, so it's very hard to drop them, very hard to refresh the squad.
But they didn't win the World Cup though.
No, but that's just what happened that day. You can't account for Sinclair getting knocked out in the first minute. You can't account for all sorts of things.
But my point is that we didn't win the World Cup, so those players shouldn't be guaranteed to start. Like, there's got to be a bit more competition. That you've got to have, as Johnny said, you've got to have depth. You've got to have people knocking on the door, haven't you? Like, you want to have people like going. You want to have like, you know, I usually like the guy in the office asked me today, like, what's your thoughts on England? And it's quite simply because he's a football fan. I was like, it's like with Sam Simmons, for example, it's like Harry Kane scoring 30 goals and Gareth Southgate going, no, I'm going to pick Peter Crouch.
Not really, though, is it?
Well, or I don't know. It's like it's picking Rashford, who might not have scored like 5 goals or something because he's got money in the bank. I don't know, whatever. Or Calvin Lewin's been playing well. Whatever football. I'm not that football savvy. Anyway, my point is, you cannot like we come back to Sam Simmons, and you come back to Don Brand. 11 tries, 6 tries. They're not even in the picture. Like,
yeah.
You've got to play. You've got to go in there going like Tom Curry has been okay. Like Johnny Hill was average, wasn't particularly good. Like Marrow is Marrow, and he needs to work on his discipline. He's an absolute superstar. But you've got to have like Charlie Alls just rocks up and gets in the team every time. But you've got players like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of it. Like David Ribbons, for example, for Northampton was superb at the weekend. Absolutely superb. But Charlie always just goes, yeah, well, I'm the third choice. I'll just rock up. There's no competition because there's no pressure that he's going to lose his spot.
Ribbons was in the Autumn Nations Cup squad and then got injured.
But that's my... I
think with the...
He was better than Hill and Yules play at the weekend.
And I think there's a thing about the starting 15 is that I would be okay if there was 2 or 3 had the if Owen Farrell was one of the 2 or 3 that had his spot pinned down, and he'd have to do something really bad to lose it because he is captain. And I actually think, I don't know, maybe not Owen Farrell, but or maybe Marrow. He has one bad game, but he's still playing the next game. But I feel there's 14 players there, maybe 15 players, and that's maybe the entire team who don't feel under threat for their position. I don't know. Jones might change his mind in the next game. He might surprise us all.
Come on, Annie. Change it. Pick up Ben Loader, Hassel Collins, and Tom Barn.
But you don't want that because then Irish won't
win. We lose. No. Pick. I don't know. Pick Slightholme. He was good. Or the new Northampton fullback we'll talk about later was rather impressive. But let's give Wales credit though, because I think we talk about England enough. Wales are getting a lot better. You looked at them when they were in the autumn, where you're thinking, bloody hell, they're not going to beat Georgia at this rate. They're playing they're getting there. They're getting there. But for me, my point, just very quickly to pop back to England, was a lot of those England players are playing themselves out of line selection. A lot of the Wales lads are playing themselves in. I would have basis off last weekend, I'd have no issue if the Lions back row was Josh Navidi, Tipperick, and Faletau. I would not have an issue with that because they, together as a group, worked superbly well. If you want to win a series, who cares if they're all Welsh? They're playing well. Pick on form, like I always say.
No, I think it's quite interesting that Wales have a very small playing population. It's quite interesting that they have this collection of 3 back row who complement each other so perfectly and are all in such good form at the same time. And this is probably, they've got a few years left in them, but I think they're all around 30. This is probably their last Lions tour at the very least. I would, absolutely no problem with all of them starting. there's a case to be made that you have Watson rather than Navidi potentially. But I mean, what Navidi stopping the Saracens, the South African carrying forwards is something that we'll need. So really, it's more likely to be between Navidi and someone like Underhill. But even then, why is Navidi worse?
Playing well, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, pick the guy on form.
I think someone who has come into form, and it was his 100th cap. I actually thought George North has been solid the past few weeks.
At 13, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's actually resurgence to think that he made his debut when he was 10 years ago when he was 18.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's still in pretty good nick, and he's a big bloke. He's very impressive.
He is probably one concussion away from having to retire, but until then, yeah.
I'd say Callum Sheedy was good as well when he came off. Wales have got a decent backup. He was just finally getting a bit of a go of where we can.
Oh, they know who their second choice 10 is. God, that's mad.
You know who ours is. It's the third choice that is completely unknown.
Yeah.
Who could? It's mind games. But no, Wales look good. Fair play to Wayne Pivac. He's playing. He's finally getting in that. We were a bit critical of him, I think, at the start, and we were certainly very critical of him at the start. But the way that he got Scarlets to play when they won the Pro 14, we're seeing that at international level now. So, apologies, Wayne. But yeah, the Wales looking pretty good. Another team on the up. Well, again, you take it with a pinch of salt because it was the Italians, but Ireland back to winning ways, 48-10. I'll be very brutally honest. I watched the first 40 minutes and then got engrossed with the highly enthralling back and forth game between Irish and Wasps, so completely turned it off in the second half. But someone, obviously, we'll talk about Sexton probably in a moment, but Hugo Keenan's going to be surely in the third fullback slot for the Lions at the moment, behind Hogg and Williams. I like the look of him. I really do like the look of him. That line he cut was very, very good. He doesn't look like he should be very good, though, because he's a little bit thin, he's a little bit gangly, but at the moment, I think he's playing very, very well.
He's certainly got a lot of potential. He's a good. We were saying that Ireland's squad is quite a mix of really old players and very young players, but he's been one of those new players that has really kind of started strong and looks like he's got a good future. So, yeah, it'd be good to see what he can do. I'm not sure I'll get on the Lions tour, but if he keeps playing well, then you never know.
Yeah. No, and I mean, very, very handy for them because 15 is, particularly if Joey Carberry gets back to fitness and form where he had been there 15, if he becomes needed to play at 10, they were then going to have quite a big problem at 15. So Keenan solving that is quite handy, and especially if they're going to continue to play Lama on the wing. It's very weird to talk about Ireland because they have almost half a team of amazing players who are just consistently injured. You sort of visualize these fantastic squads they could put together that will never play. It's difficult, but yeah, Keenan is very good. Craig Casey as a forward, that is what you want from a 9. Bullet accurate passes and speed.
Yeah, he looks good, doesn't he?
Very, very good. Obviously very small, but shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
I really like Kelleher as well, the hooker.
Yes.
They've needed someone to replace Rory Best, and obviously a long time it was Herring for a while, the Ulster hooker. But Kelleher's taken his opportunity to score against France. Obviously, he looked very good in the loose, and his arrows were very good. So, yeah, I was very impressed with him as well.
Yeah, did well for the under-20s, Kelleher. And then I think last year was maybe a year too early for him, but obviously another year of professional gym and match experience, and he's pretty much nearly there. Not to say that Herring is not good enough.
Very, very good player.
He'd start for most, well, no, not start, but he'd be in and around the conversation for most of the other Six Nations countries. pretty good.
And so it was good to say you made a point about Joe Carberry. He did come back for Munster this week, so that's really good for them. As I say, it's been out for a while. Sexton obviously made a difference for Ireland. They probably have got to keep him going until he gives up and the engine stops working, because realistically Joey Carberry's in that filler, because after that I'm not overly convinced by Billy Burns. I'm not convinced by Ross Byrne. I've never been convinced by Ross Byrne, to be honest, when I've seen him play. Even when he plays for Leinster, I don't think he's overly good. His brother seems better. From watching some highlights of his brother seems a lot better than him. So better from Sexton. Obviously he's got, still to this day, like after 7 years or however long he's been doing it, the Sexton wraparound. No one can defend that. Like, they can't. Why has no defence coach worked out how to defend that Sexton wraparound yet? It does make me laugh.
Well, yeah, and if it's going to work against anybody, it's going to work against this Italy team who sort of can't defend at all and haven't got the line speed or the coordination to really stop anything. But like this was a game where Sexton was always going to do pretty well, given a lot more time, and can stand deeper or even stand flatter and still have more time. He's still as effective as he always was, but it's against the more serious teams that can put more pressure on him that he is starting to struggle. But yeah, nice to see him have a brief swan song.
Go
on, Johnny.
I was just going to say it was probably pretty easy against the lacklustre Italy team, who sadly I think missed Varney getting injured in the warm-up. Even though Brayley was good, just see if Varney can play 10 and just start both of them. I don't know. Try something.
Yeah, I mean, Varney being injured really didn't help them for this game. He's been really good, and every minute that this team plays together, they will get better. So losing any sort of pitch time and coordination that they've built up is going to hurt them at this point. But yeah, nothing too terrible to be concerned about for Italy. They just need to hire a defence coach.
Yeah. I think Carlo Cano was their most capped player, and he had 40-odd caps. I mean, I think the average was so low.
He got 50. Yeah. He came out on his own.
Oh, fair.
Which is really impressive, because he's been around. He's still quite young.
Yeah, I think he turned into quite a good player.
I think he work quite well.
Less dirty.
But yeah, Italy's a project, isn't it? They've got but the thing is, with them, they're going to have to lose a lot to get anywhere, because you've got to expose Garbisi, Canna, Varney, Brayley, Dave Parecki? No. Jake Pelledri, sorry. These guys that are... Anyway, the prop that Saracens are assigned, who looks good. So you've got to expose them. They're going to lose, but by the time of the World Cup in 2 years' time, they might be more competitive, because they've had that exposure, because they've had to rebrand from the era of Zani, of Giordini, of Parise. That's gone now. So give these guys some time. Keep them in the Six Nations, because I think we talked about this before, or have a playoff maybe, but no one's going to do anything about that at the moment. They keep talking about it, but yeah. Very quickly, obviously something on France. Obviously, Fabien Gauthier has been outed as the Mr. Zero, or whatever it is.
Gone to watch his kid play rugby.
Too much jouet. Bad boy. But I'm pleased with the competition that they just didn't chuck Scotland the win, because I do want to watch. I do want to see that game. I want Scotland to be able to test themselves, and I want to see where France are at the moment. So silly Fabian. But
yeah, it is a bit unedifying how whiny Scotland have been. Obviously, it does create more work for them to try to secure the release of their players, and whenever the game gets played, it will be slightly disadvantaging Scotland because they're sort of in a nice run of form, and whenever it is will not be this weekend just gone. But and also obviously it's completely France's fault. But Scotland, the sort of SRU and Scotland fans in general, getting a bit of reputation for complaining and generally just being
Scottish.
Well, no, that's unfair, but just like this is a thing that's happened. Don't make it worse than it already is. Like they did with the World Cup and the cyclone rather. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's dealt with okay, and we can see these two teams play full strength.
Hi guys, Johnny here from the Ruck and Maul Podcast. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of Eddie's favourites. Part 2 is also live now on our YouTube channel, so go and check that out. As I say, we're a rugby podcast, 4 mates that enjoy talking about rugby, so help us grow the channel by giving us a like, subscribe, and tick that bell to stay notified. Thanks guys.